basically, which is fine. And no one's going to turn around and question that one.
Yeah.
When we were sort of alluding to the ball playing players, Andy Farrell's had a couple of mentions there now, and in fact, that was the first mention for Farrell as well. Anyway, Andy Farrell and Paul Sculthorpe, they're the two players we were talking about, aren't they? In reality, they're the kind of two players from our time that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when I grow old and see a rugby league player with a number 13 on the back, my mind will always go to those two players first. I think because that was the time when I was first getting into the sport, and they were the peak of their powers as well. Farrell, captain, Great Britain's captain, a fantastic leader of men in many ways, and goal kicker, everything. And Sculthorpe had an incredible athleticism. It just his joints and stuff kind of went away from him, didn't he? And his muscles. He looks now fitter than when he retired, and he doesn't look any older. It's remarkable, that man. And the two of those, I just think at that time, and Farrell was a bit more of a bruiser. Sculthorpe was a bit more of a bit more graceful, I think. But both could open up defences, and both could make a hole in the defence themselves as well. And both goal kickers. Phenomenal.
Yeah. I think, I mean, if you're, putting together a 90s, best of the 90s Super League team, they're scrapping it out for the 13. I would put Sculthorpe just above Farrell, but that's purely I wouldn't disagree with anyone who swaps them around. They were both giants of early Super League in that position.
I haven't done that Super League 25 team pick your best team thing because I know that those two will be only available as loose forwards. What's the fucking point of picking a team where you can't put them both in? You're putting one at 11 and one at 12. You're not putting either of them at loose forward because you can't say fundamentally one was absolutely better than the other, but you can't pick a best of Super League side without the two of them in it. That's my position on it.
Well, we'll have to do our own.
That's my position. I've not checked out. Maybe you can put them in. I mean, Andy Farrell came through in the second row and earned his stripes to become the loose forward. Paul Sculthorpe did play second row as well, but probably maybe made his name as a loose forward first, and then probably played quite a few big games. The Saints would start him at big games at 6, and then Tommy Martin had maybe influenced the game later on or what have you. Whereas Farrell only ever played standoff out of necessity in his career. He either played in the second row early on or played loose forward. But he didn't do it like they do it now. He'd play a lot of the game a little bit, both of them actually, when they were loose forward, would play a lot of the game a little bit wider, not really get into first receiver or as much, always be second or third receiver, but they'd pick a side. Sculthorpe seemed to be a bit more effective down the right, Farrell seemed to be a bit more effective down the left. That's why it works, one at 11, one at 12.
Who have you got at 13 in this team then?
Sean O'Loughlin. But
too light that team.
It's time for the history lesson because so far there's five loose forwards in the Rugby League Hall of Fame, and so far we've only talked about Ellery Hanley and only just got round to talking about Ellery Hanley. And now Joshua's granddad's up, so John Scott is going to take us through a bit more, and he's definitely going to cover off some more of those. In fact, I think he does all but one of the Hall of Famers. So let's see what he has to say.
Yep, so Joshua's granddad, John, says, loose forward was a position which has slowly lost its status and has been changed into a third prop, expected to drive through the middle. Old school 13s include Vince Wild Bull Cornelius, Gentleman Johnny Whiteley, Harry Poole and Dougie Lawton. all of who went on to coach. Moving into the 70s saw skilled players such as Mal Reilly, Harry Pinner, Steve Knocker-Norton, and one of the most unconventional players of the era, Mick Crane, unable to pass a Bookies and celebrated winning the title by running to the crowd to flag a fag. Roll the clock forward, and we have who many believe to be the best in Ellery Hanley. Then we move on to the international selectors' nightmare of Sculthorpe and Farrell gracing the game at the same time. Sinfield followed those, but he couldn't decide if he's a 13 or a 6. In my view, the few remaining traditional 13s are sick note lockers and Joe, just put my kneecap back, Westerman. International 13s of note, Jason Smith, sent off on his second play of the match at the KCOM. And Wayne Pearce from the 82 Invincibles, reputed to put in his training session and then run 8 miles back to the team hotel.
Yeah, so plenty covered there.
Yes,
I'm
plenty.
glad you mentioned Jason Smith, because I remember Jason Smith coming to Hull at the start of the noughts. He played 3 or 4 seasons, I think. And his first couple of seasons, he was massive in making Hull from being a team that weren't even in Super League to being a contender, to be honest. So I really rated him, and he was a very good ball player, but a tough player too, wasn't he? He was one of those that'd play a bit of 6, but really wanted to be 13. He was like a poor Australian version of Farrell, but he was a very, very good player.
Oh yeah, I think Jason Smith did a lot for them. Hard as nails type player, and really, was very good for them, definitely. Other players, I mean, names that you pick out, Mal Reilly obviously is a unquestionable genius of the game. Yeah,
I think of him more as a coach.
Yes.
But a legend on both sides of the world,
well,
a Hall of Famer as a player, as a loose forward. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Just saying. I think of Dougie Lawton as a coach. There must be something about the mindset of a 13, maybe.
Well, even you look at, Ellery Hanley did a good job as a coach for 1 year. Don't know if he could quite cope with coaching players who were inferior to him.
That must be a difficult thing, that when you've got so much natural talent.
Yeah, and Johnny Whiteley was obviously a Hull player who played a long career for Hull. He played in the 50s, didn't he? Mostly, he was I think he's the last person to have been inducted into the Rugby League Hall of Fame at this stage. Actually, yeah. The only one that is missed there, and he'll tell me it's because he's of the Hall of Famers. He'll tell me because it's before his time, because he died in 1951. This player, but still, I'm disappointed that John missed him. And it's Douglas Clark of the great Huddersfield Team of All Talents era. So he played for Huddersfield from 1909 to 1927. Played over 480 games for Huddersfield, and was also like a big, played for Great Britain in this Northern, like sort of the time when it was turning from Northern Union to Great Britain and England, and he was a very, very good player of that time. Like when you read about that Huddersfield side, the two players you read about, Douglas Clark always feels to be one of the two names you read about.
Yeah.
From that side, so yeah, he was a big part of that side that won a lot of trophies during that era, and is part of the Hall of Fame. So I think we should cover him off whilst we're doing John's history lesson.
Yes. Yes. Just a tad for our time.
Yeah. So Vince Corralius and Mal Reilly are the other ones that are in there, along with Ellery Hanley, Johnny Whiteley, Clark, and there's one other. I think. Where am I at now?
I don't know.
That's it. Whiteley, Corralius, Clark, Hanley, and Mal Reilly. Yeah. are the ones in the Hall of Fame.
Yep. So Mark, we'll go 2205, said it before, but Hinchcliffe was criminally underrated for us when he was at 13. And then he says his year at hooker, maybe not so much. We looked a different side when he was on, and his stats spoke for themselves, saying that Fame who never put a foot wrong for us either. Hinchcliffe, a classic, working hard, never see him type player.
Yeah, I always sort of felt like he got the best out of what he was. So in that regard, you'd normally look at like second rowers rather than loose forwards who played that. But actually, yeah, he had a really good influence on that Huddersfield side at that time. But it was a patchy up and down Huddersfield side. But he was part of a storm. He was part of the storm once they sort of got over the salary cap woes. That kind of era, wasn't he? He kind of like came in at the back end of their salary cap cheating era. But
yeah, when they had to, actually have a reasonable sized squad. Yeah.
Yeah, and he played throughout that time. He played predominantly off the bench, where he'd come in and play as loose forward, or if needed as hooker as well. But yeah, I think he was a very, very good player. But I don't think he probably had an individual influence enough on the games. When you when you look at the stats, when you listen to the other players that played in the game, you know that he had a big role to play. But he never felt like, as a spectator, it didn't really feel like Ryan Hinchcliffe often was dominating a game.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But he was a very good player.
Yes.
David Fayumu, that was his first name, wasn't it?
Yes.
He was a talented player that never quite got to the top. I don't really feel. Was he there when they won the League Leaders Shield? He was, yeah.
There you go. You've answered your own question.
I was asking it whilst I was typing it.
Asking and answering.
David Powell at St David 2911 said, at Saints, Sculthorpe, Vince Wildbull of the Pampas Corellius, and Kel Coslet. Elsewhere, Ellery Hanley, Mal Rayleigh, and Andy Farrell. Wow, what a group of fearsome, brilliant players that is. Yeah, it's a great group.
Can't argue with that, really. And finally, Tom Andrews says, wouldn't say favourite because I can't stand him, but Lockers has been the very best in Super League for a very long time, and is probably one of the last true loose forwards around.
See, for me, that's one of the things that makes that holds our sport back. How can you not stand one of the best players of his generation, who's been your country's captain?
Because we can't stand Wigan, that's why.
But yeah, sure.
Do you want to get over your gushing now? Do you want to get it out in the open?
I just think I've been quite lucky, because
you've been very lucky with your 13s.
I was born in January 1985, and Wigan signed Ellery Hanley from Bradford in June or July 1985. And since then, basically, I've had, and I haven't because I didn't watch the first two play live in a Wigan shirt, but I've had Ellery Hanley, Phil Clark, and forget what you think about Phil Clark as a commentator or Captain Birdseye impersonator. Ellery Hanley, Phil Clark, Andy Farrell, and Sean O'Loughlin. So in 35 years, that's what our club has had at loose forward. And all of those people have been mainstays internationally as well. Other than Farrell, I think during that era there wouldn't have been the economic incentive to go to the NRL. But when they had the other two went and played in Australia before him, and Sean O'Loughlin's probably alongside James Roby in the two greatest players that haven't gone to test themselves in the NRL in the last decade of era, and really every one of those players, but especially Hanley, Farrell, and O'Loughlin, put themselves above 99% of other players in the competition. They were that good, and they've been that good. And so I've been really lucky to have those players to watch, Farrell and O'Loughlin, for that to come through. And O'Loughlin's game changed. He was